And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney. And I tell you what, folks, you are lucky you're joining us today because you've all heard of the triple threat, right? Well, we've got a quadruple threat for you here today. We have our guest is a novelist, screenwriter, playwright, and nonfiction writer. So that's a ton to get to. So let's get to it, Sarah. I think it's time to get bookish.
I certainly agree. We have got a lot of ground to cover today, folks. We are delighted to be joined by Suzanne Trauth, who is
Whoop, whoop.
celebrating the release of her brand new suspense novel, The First to Die. And I mean, chilling name, absolutely love it. The way that this story progresses, where we have a lot of flashbacks and memories coming to life, we're dealing with grief and loss and family connections. There's a lot of really meaty things going on in this story. So, Suzanne, we're delighted to have you on to chat about it. Welcome to A Bookish Moment.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah and JC. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the first to die. Okay,
Ooh,
right
there it
Look
there.
at that
is.
cover. Oh,
Yeah.
that cover is so
Okay.
haunting.
Yeah, that
Oh,
is. That
oh,
is.
thank you, thank you. Great designer. But
Yeah.
no, I'm thrilled to be here chatting with the two of you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And we of course we want to talk about the book. But
Right.
first, we want to talk about you. You have, like we kind of hinted, you have an amazing backstory. And clearly you are just so talented and have given so much to the arts community over the years. How about you tell us your story?
Oh,
Tell us about your
sure.
background and how you ended up writing scary thrillers with amazing covers.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned before we started, I'm a Midwest girl. I grew up in Southern Ohio, and I started writing, as 8, 9, 10 years old, like lots of writers, really bad stuff, by the way. And I was reading, mysteries. And the Bobbsey twins and Trixie Bell. I don't even know if anybody knows these anymore, but I was reading those and just got really engaged with the whole mystery thing. And I was in high school and I was writing and really interested in writing, but then something happened. I got introduced to theater. And theater just became my life. And the writing went out the window for about 35 years maybe. And I was just kind of sucked into the whole theater thing in high school and college and just, proceeded to create a career as a college professor. And I was teaching all kinds of different subjects in theater, acting and directing and producing and all of that. And and starting to tinker again with the writing thing. And it took me a while to get, as I said, to get back to it. But I was so ingrained, I think, in the theater world that I couldn't help but put theater into most of the books I've written. So it's managed to find its way, into my life, even though I'm not doing it anymore. I've been writing full time since I retired. So it's a little bit of the backstory.
I have to ask, as JC and I were talking about earlier, we are theater people in a sense. But do you have favorite shows, favorite musicals? What out there is like something that stayed with you, as like some of the great shows do?
Yeah, I did direct a musical once, and I had to learn tap dance to do that, and so
Ooh.
I walked away. I walked away from musicals. That was that. But I would say, over the years, one of my loves was Shakespeare, and a little plug here. I loved Hamnet. The book and the movie. So,
Hmm.
that's a kind of a recent something I enjoyed recently. But I think Shakespeare has been something that I've always really enjoyed, both directing and producing it, and it never grows old, and introducing it to new generations of students is exciting, to have a student say, wow, that kind of makes sense to me is really thrilling, I think, when you're teaching. So, yeah, I'd have to say, and certainly there are other playwrights. Tennessee Williams, we mentioned him earlier, Streetcar, because it figures in the book. So he's also another playwright that I both love to produce and love to see.
Mm.
So speaking of Tennessee Williams and
Mhm.
mentioning in the book, perfect segue to the first to die. This
Okay.
is that just those four words right there pack a lot into it. This is well, I'm just going to stop meandering with my strange thoughts that are making no sense now. Tell us about it. The first to die.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you my little mini elevator pitch, okay? Is that all right?
Love it.
Um, because I've been asked to do this now. I think I'm getting better at it.
All right.
So, it's a story of a young woman who is estranged from her family living on the West Coast, and she's estranged from her family for about 15 years. And she comes back to the East Coast, to New Jersey, to the funeral of her mother, who disappeared 15 years earlier, and her remains have recently been found. And she comes home for the funeral. And she hasn't been home. She was 15 when she left, so she was young. And she's now an adult. And, her world has shifted radically. And when she comes home, because she left under really painful circumstances, when she comes home, it's hard for her to know um, who is her family now? Who can she trust? That whole notion of what is your home and where do you call home? It's not only a geographic thing, but it's an emotional thing. And so she's
Mhm.
struggling with, what is my home? And who am I? Who am I now that I'm back here where I haven't been, for 15 years? And what complicates her return and dramatically and theatrically is that she now at around 30 looks identical to the way her mother looked when she
Mm.
disappeared 15 years earlier. So it's an odd kind of thing for her to experience, coming back and people looking at her like they're seeing a ghost. So yeah, so now she's back and now she's got to deal with. And I think that it's a cold case. And nobody, law enforcement isn't nearly as obsessed with it as she is. She wants to know what happened to her mother, to the mother she adored her mother, and they had similar interests, which is, of course, theater. And so now she's back home with this great obsession, trying to get someone to pay attention.
Mhm. And I
That's a
think
long
the
elevator pitch.
no,
So,
no, no. I
Well,
mean,
thank
where I
goodness we
live,
had a
like,
long ride because that
yeah,
was
it's a
amazing.
long. Our elevator. We only live in a three-story building, and our elevator is legitimately a 5-minute ride. So,
okay.
it cues up so many great questions for us on this, Suzanne, because number one, you had mentioned that Connie, she now looks like her mother did. So
Mhm.
kind of going back to the cover where you have this woman looking into the mirror and either seeing her mother or herself and kind of being maybe confused a bit about like, who am I? But who also was my mom, opens up a really like deep emotional kind of search that Connie has to go on in this throughout this journey. And before we kind of dive into those connections that she has to form and figuring out kind of who in her mother's world would have reason to kill her, I do want to say hello to our wonderful viewers that are joining us here in the chat. We have Alma saying, hi, Sarah, J.C., and Suzanne from Arkansas. Good afternoon. Alma also loves your cover as well, Suzanne. We have
Thank
Farmhouse Reader
you.
saying, congratulations on your new release, and also calling out that my hair color is different. Yes. I got inspired by, it always seems to happen. I wear a wig and then I decide, oh, I want my hair to be that color in real life. So yes, thanks for noticing. We have DHB saying a most happy and sunny Tuesday afternoon. Alma saying, I love Trixie Belden. Donna McKenzie saying, hello, Suzanne. Congratulations on your new book. And Alma saying, it sounds amazing. So
Oh,
wonderful comments all. Thank you very much. Make sure you pop any questions that you have for Suzanne in the chat as we go along. Let's talk about that aspect of home that you mentioned, Suzanne, because
yes.
Connie comes back, and she's brought back because her sister calls her. Can
Mm.
you tell us a little bit about the relationship that she and her sister Gabby have? Because that is one that, you know, depending on how much true crime you consume, I consume a lot of it. I'm always struck by how different families process the grief of losing someone, whether it's they're missing or whether they have been knowingly killed. Can you tell us about how their relationship begins at the beginning of the book, and kind of how Connie grapples with the being in her sister's orbit once more?
Hmm. Sure. So they are, the family is Irish, although her mother was French. So, but there's a strong Irish element here. And the sisters are like 10 months apart, and they call those Irish twins. You know, that's a thing. And so they're close in age, and they were very close. They could have been it couldn't be closer, I think, if they were twins. And probably from the time they were little, and there's a scene with the two of them fighting, you know, as sisters do. And but again, they're very close. But about the time they started to hit their preteen years, things kind of veered, you know, for them. And Connie became really obsessed with the theater world and wanting to act. And her sister, was much quieter, became sort of equally obsessed with the library. And so the two of them were starting to grow into their own worlds. And at just about that time, their mother disappears. And so her sister says to her, Gabby even says, you know, I was devastated by losing mom, but you couldn't handle it, you know, and she's right. And what happens is Connie just explodes and acts out and gets in trouble, and the police are called, all of that kind of thing. And the only thing they think they can do is send her away because this environment is just pretty overwhelming. And probably the one thing she regrets the most is leaving her sister behind. I think they both regret that. But, you know, they're what, about 14, 15 when that happens. And so they're struggling through teenage years. And Gabby is as well. So when she comes back, it's tense. It's not it's not fun in the beginning. I think, you know, I don't want to say too much, but you know, I think it's fair to say that they struggle to find each other, to find home again, you know, and to find that relationship again. I think sisters, you know, can form a very special relationship. And I have to just put a little family plug. I have six sisters, and so I understand. I understand the six wonderful women, and I understand that relationship. So I think they struggle, but they need each other. And I think that's, you know, that's crucial in the story.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is you know you're mentioning your six sisters. I have five older sisters, so Suzanne, I'm totally there with you. I'm from an old Irish Catholic family. The Irish twin things, you know,
Yep.
we didn't have
Okay.
anybody. I don't have any older sibs that were that close, but close. So I totally get that too. So
Uh-huh.
I guess I would kind of like to know, you know, from the just from that again, talking about that family aspect,
Hmm.
um, you know, and then to have the sisters torn apart and torn up at such a vulnerable age, that's some pretty heavy stuff. Where did I guess where did the idea for this book, where did the idea for that relationship come from?
That's a great question. I you know, I'm sort of the belief sometimes stories find you. And I had been having that kind of experience in the books I'd written prior to this. And I'd heard a story about a woman, you know, back in the 90s, and it kind of stayed with me. And, you know, that character who was interesting at the time that I heard the story, she morphed and changed over the years. And I'm talking decades, you know, and I kind of put that away. And then the story came back. And she found her way into the book, but as I worked on the book, her role diminished. So she was an older woman, and she became kind of less important in the story. But all of a sudden, as she stepped back, the people around her stepped forward. And the character of Connie was always there, but she how to put this, she, in the earlier versions of the story, had way more agency. She had a lot more authority in her life. And I think it was when I discovered how vulnerable she was as a young girl and then as an adult that the story flourished. I needed to find her weaknesses. I needed to find where she was vulnerable. I needed to find where she had issues with coming home. And then the story settled in.
Oh,
And I think as you're writers, you know, right? You know when something clicks for you.
wow. But
Yeah.
I'm really curious though on this point, Suzanne, because I guess the way that I have experienced writing books is it is a for me it's always been a pretty linear process of you write chapter 1 and you write the way through. It sounds like the way that this book came together was a real exploration, and I'm wondering, like, could you share a little bit about like what your drafting process looked like? Do you have earlier drafts that are told from completely different points of view in this instance?
Yes. Well, sometimes they're very messy, those
Mm-hmm.
that early first draft. Her name was always Connie. She was always, you know, in this New Jersey world. Theater was always a part of it. But at one point she was an actress herself as an adult.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And she had, like I said, she had a lot more authority and visibility, you know, as a kind of a star. And um her sister was around, her father was around, the mother was really the central victim of the story. So some of those things didn't change, but I do know, and it took a couple years. I'm not one of those right overnight folks, but it took a couple of years, and in that process, the story really did change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had very different early drafts. I mean, they different additional characters. As I said, Connie was very different. So the story did change, and it changed over. I will tell you, it changed with some good editing, and I got really good advice and had to, you know, you throw out stuff and you bring
Mm-hmm.
things in. And so it took drafts and it took, I think, me thinking through this story in terms of, well, what is it really about? And that took me a while. It
Mm-hmm.
took me a while to get there. Yeah.
Well, and we feel for you that it took a while, but we're thankful that you got there,
Oh,
because this is a fantastic story. Thrillers, for me, thrillers can be a struggle because I'm too much of a weenie to handle a lot of thrillers. So it's always, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. But I do want to mention Alma chimed in about the whole sister chat. That Alma says she has one sister, and they're 15 months apart. And when they were little, everyone thought they were twins because their mom dressed them alike. So there we go. So,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
very
I
nice.
can I can tell you very briefly that several of my sisters were very close in age, and when we were little, our birthdays were only like a week apart. And when we were little, whoever was the first birthday knew what the other two knew what they were getting. We all got the same thing,
Oh,
different colors. So they were different colors. So,
yeah.
oh, my mother, bless her heart, she had her work cut out for her, you know.
See, Sarah, you missed out on all this stuff, not being among huge families.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Seriously though, Suzanne, one of the things that I'm curious about is, you've mentioned a little bit your directing background, you're a playwright. Those are very visual art forms, the stage.
Mhm.
And then now you're writing, which is
Mhm.
still storytelling, but while it's visual because we're reading, it's everything we're seeing is in our head instead of, in our eyes. So can you tell me how what kind of influences did maybe that stage and theater and directing background play in your storytelling today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that all of my years uh, analyzing plays and teaching plays and directing and working on them helped hone my ability to write dialogue. And I that comes the easiest. If you like you list the things that come easier for you as a writer, I would say dialogue comes easiest. And I have to sometimes work to add other components to the novel so that it's not just a fleshed out screenplay. But so I would say that dialogue and character were most have come most easily, and the whole notion of creating plot, structure, that's where screenplay classes and writing really helped. Um, Talking and learning about structure and the arc of a play. So the thing I had to work on a little more was description, you know. um, yeah, filling in the gaps,
Hmm.
in between the dialogue and the action. And so I think that's something I'm still working on is getting the description of places and events and people um, more, I guess, creating more clarity and more ease with that part of the writing process.
And it's such a fine balance to uncover because, I think there's the as much as we love Lord of the Rings on this podcast, there's the trope of like it takes J.R.R. Tolkien like, 4 paragraphs to describe a tree.
Mhm.
And so figuring out like what is the balance between just enough and and that right amount. How like what kind of like any educational things did you do, Suzanne, to improve? You had mentioned, you had some editing done. Did you kind of immerse yourself in like any critique groups? Like what was the process of strengthening those weak spots for you like?
Yeah, I think a little bit of all of that. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
having outside readers, having a great editor, several editors who brought different skill sets to the process. I think the other thing is terrific is reading. And everybody's folks say if you want to learn to write, you need to read. And
Mm-hmm.
the more I read now, even a stack of the mystery books, working my way through, the more I read, I think the more I'm educated in what makes for a good mystery or good thriller suspense. And I think that has been crucial. That's been, in a way, an education, just reading and reading fully, and reading in various genres, not just mystery, but reading
Mm-hmm.
um, in a variety of genres. Yeah. So I would say it's a little bit of all of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Suzanne, this has just been a fantastic conversation. We
Oh,
appreciate your time, and unfortunately, we don't have much time left. But one of the things that I would like to ask you about is, because we haven't mentioned it so far in, with regard to the book, is that this is more than just Connie going back to Jersey and dealing with, her family and her mom's disappearance. Rumor has it there's maybe another dead body that shows up too. Can you maybe talk about a little bit about how that just muddies up the waters for everybody?
yeah. Well, I guess that's our job, isn't it? When
Yeah.
we write a mystery, we really try to muddy the waters. And uh, you hope you do it. There's going to be someone who says, "Oh, I figured it out, page one." That's not so good. But when folks talk about the twists and turns, and I think that's one of the things that we rely on are the shifting and the turning, and keeping it real, keeping it not so far out in left field that someone says, "Well, I didn't see, what's that about?" Keeping it possible, plausible, but at the same time, pulling the reader along and saying, watch out, something else could happen. There's another twist ahead. Just when you thought you had it figured out, maybe you don't. And so I think, I guess for me, one rule is, you can't introduce someone into the book late in the game. Nobody's going to buy that. And however you introduce these additional folks and deaths and issues and all of that, it does need to be, I guess, plausible. If a reader needs to say, "Oh yeah, I could buy that," you know. If that answers, your
Hmm.
Oh
question
yeah,
there.
absolutely.
So,
And to your point about influences, it all goes back to, the whole Chekhov's gun theory that if it shows up in the first act, or if you're going to use it in the third act, it has to be in the first act anyway. You all know what I mean. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's, yeah.
And speaking, you had mentioned the twists and turns. There is, without giving too many things away, the reveal is very twisty, and I love a good book that really gets you comfortable in perhaps one train of thought, and then completely pulls the rug out from underneath you, and you're just left like, what? Like, how did I not see this coming? Um, and for because as a very avid reader, I tend to think that as a mystery writer, we are sometimes at a disadvantage in the reading experience because we kind of know how to work our audience members. So we can kind of feel if we're being worked. So the books that I love are those books that don't feel like I'm being worked in a way to like think a certain direction or suspect someone when I know that I should be turning my attention over here. So I
Right.
just find that to be very, very masterful, Suzanne.
Oh.
Can you tell us, are you doing any other events, readings, podcasts that our folks can follow your writing journey on, or like what's the best way for folks to stay connected with you and to learn more about all that you have going on in your writing world?
Sure. Well, the website is certainly one thing, and on Facebook, I post upcoming events and things that are happening. I'll be at the Liberty States Fiction Writers Conference. That's April. I don't want to get this wrong. I think it's April 11th. Yeah, and also at the Days of Wine and Romance and More, and that's at a
Ooh,
winery in Columbia, New Jersey, and that's in May
ex
2nd. And BoucherCon will be, I don't know if you folks will be at BoucherCon, but in the fall. But also, Facebook, I would say, and I am on Instagram, and my email is on my website.
well,
perfect.
that's so cool. And I got to let you know that Alma chimed in that she just looked and she actually has the ebook of The First to Die. She bought it back in November and she promises to get busy reading it. Good job, Alma. Make
Oh,
sure you
thank you,
check in
Alma.
with us later.
Thank you.
Well, as we bring the show to a close, Suzanne, we like to kind of find out what is kind of tickling your entertainment fancy. What are you reading, watching, listening to? So you maybe share with us and our viewers a few things that you're enjoying right now.
Sure. Probably like many people, I'm watching The Pit, and it's amazing from a writing point of view, from a performing point of view. Um, it, it's astounding to me how they put that show together. So really enjoying that. And I have to say, sort of, this was a little bit of, fun. I watched the Bridgerton series.
Oh,
And I love the show,
love it.
and I love the costumes. So they're very theatrical. So I got a kick out of those. But I'm just finishing reading The Maid by Nita Prose,
Oh yeah.
and it had been recommended to me by a number of people, and it's one of the most interesting singular protagonists that I've run across. And for that, it's like a lesson in writing for that reason alone. And of course, my all-time favorite is Louise Penny. I read all of hers, so I'm just like you're reading, you want to work through the series. So I'm about caught up with her. So yeah, those are occupying me at the moment.
Wonderful.
Excellent. So, how about you, Sarah?
I I'm trying to think anything new that we've come across since our last conversation, JC. So we haven't started watching it yet, but it's been on like every time I turn on our Fire Stick, the Young Sherlock pops up,
Oh,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think it's a Amazon Prime a new series that I'm like, oh, I have to watch that. So I'd be very curious if any of our viewers have watched that yet, and whether or not it's worth pursuing, because we're almost done with A Night of Seven Kingdoms, as well as we're still going through the X Files. That's like if we need a show just to like blob out to, it's like okay, the X Files, we're
Yeah.
putting it on. and I'm trying to think. I think that's pretty much. Oh, and Killer Confessions, which is the show about the Texas Ranger who like gets inside the killer's head to get people to confess to him. And it's like most of the people he talks to are just like they're just ready to share. So I was like, I don't know if he's like that special or not. But the stories are very, very interesting. And I think that's on HBO. Jim, anything new on your end?
Well, first off, I want to say that Alma confirms she loves Bridgerton, so there you go.
Okay.
My wife and I tried it. We're still back on season one, so we got to get caught up. That's what we got to do as far as our Bridgerton goes. So anyway, as far as what we've been doing, Suzanne, it's perfect timing with your theater background because this past weekend my wife and I went and saw a community theater production of Funny Girl. And
Oh,
my
yes.
wife has been a Barbara Streisand fan for as long as she can remember. And so when we found out this group was doing Funny Girl, it was like, we couldn't miss it. And so it was a lot of fun. First time I'd seen it. So again, folks, this is my chance to remind you, support community theater, support independent artists, all that stuff. You know, the arts are under a constant threat, so support your local community groups and authors. So that's my pitch. And then I'm finally reading something new. I had been through a terrible reading slump where I just couldn't get through anything in literally months. And so I finally found something called Alias Emma. It's a spy thriller set in London, and it's basically a rescue mission that over the course of the book, it takes place over 24 hours. And how this young spy has to rescue this individual and get him to safety while the Russians are hot on their tails the entire time. So it's been pretty breathless. I've lost some sleep that someday I may regret losing, but for now I'm happy with it. So that's what I've got. So
That's
yeah,
great.
so that's what we're doing.
That's the that like comeback moment of if you've been having trouble reading or finding something that like sparks such like excitement within you, when you find that recapture that spark again, it's just like it's so magical.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
I was like,
that's I'm
finally.
glad that's happened for you, JC, because been there, done that. um,
Hmm.
and it's always good to find your stride again. um, Suzanne, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for
Oh,
stopping by the
thank you
show and
for
talking
having
about
me.
Connie and her search for justice for her mother. Your website, say it again for us before we sign off.
It's just www.suzannetrauth.com.
Perfect. And we have that in our show notes, folks, so that you can
Terrific.
click on it after the show and head to all of the wonderful books that Suzanne has written. We thank you very much for your time, for being here with us
Oh,
this
it's been my
afternoon.
pleasure.
And
Been my
we
pleasure.
hope wonderful. We'd love to hear it, and we hope that you come back when you have a new book or a new play to share with us, because that would be so
Thank you.
exciting to dive
Yeah.
into. We've got Alma in our chat saying thank you, Suzanne, for being here. We very much appreciate it. Folks, we have another episode for you tomorrow afternoon. I believe this show is starting at 4 o'clock, so mark your calendars. We're a little bit earlier than we usually are. We're going to be joined by cozy mystery author Lois Winston talking about her newest Anastasia Pollock mystery. So we'll have some cozy times for you tomorrow afternoon. And if you haven't gotten a chance to see our special Bookish Hour presentation that we had last week, where the Cozy Mystery Crew Facebook group authors all came together and performed a fabulous play. It was loads of fun. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I hope that you take a stop by our channel and watch it, because it was such a good time. But again, everyone, thank you very much for being here. We will see you later in the week. And until then, folks, stay bookish. Be well, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye bye.